record. Okay, so welcome everyone. So as I was saying, I am going to share my screen. I have a presentation. We are going to go through the 4 steps of the MOVE method from my book, but I also want to keep a little bit of this space open for your questions, for anything that you would want to share, for anything that you want to like address, anything that comes up for you, anything that's been showing up for you. When it comes to lack of clarity, when it comes to wanting to get unstuck, when it comes to, like Valerie was saying, having a gazillion ideas, juggling all of those ideas and not really knowing what to do or where to start. So let me share my screen. This is going to be the first test. So could anyone let me know if you can see my screen? That would be wonderful. I'm assuming you can. You should see, all good? Okay. You should see Get Unstuck, Dive Deeper webinar. Is that the case? No? Yes? Somebody?
We see
yes. It. Okay, super. Thank you. Okay, so a little bit about me. Not too much. I am, as you know, Murielle Marie. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been a coach for creatives and entrepreneurs for the past 10 years almost in the meantime. And the book that I wrote that we're going to dive into, at least into the method today, is a book that is sort of a summary of everything that I have learned along the way and all of the stories of clients who finally got unstuck and figure out what they wanted to do, gained clarity, and were able to move forward. Now, I'm doing quite a few things. I'm also a creative generalist, as some of you know. So I write books. I'm currently working on a new startup in the coaching field. And of course, I have my international coaching business, which I'm very happy with and which allows me to do the work I want to do every day. Now, first, a few questions for you. In this webinar, I would like you to reflect on and try to find some answers to the questions of what is keeping you stuck right now? And please share in the chat because I would love to know what would you like to achieve? What do you think is possible for you? Or maybe what do you think isn't possible for you? Because that's a big one for a lot of people as well. What are you afraid of? And why aren't you doing the thing that you know you actually want to be doing? So if anybody feels like sharing, I would love to know what it is that's keeping you busy right now. Valerie mentioned having all of these ideas in her head. What is it that makes you come to this webinar today? Okay. I'm not really seeing anyone, so I'm wondering, you're still there? I guess so. Lauren, continued motivation and support. Okay. That's a good one. Accountability is another one that's often mentioned. Also, lack of clarity is a big one that a lot of people suffer with. Yanka, that's a fun one. Yes, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. That's an important one. And I think just mentioning that environment is something that I talk about in the book is really important because our environment can motivate us to achieve things, or it can actually keep us from achieving things. And that goes for people places, and even things we have around us. So that is an important one as well. Now, okay, please feel free to continue to share in the chat, but for now we're going to move forward. So the MOVE method that I talk about in the book has 4 steps. It's called MOVE because it's mindset, options, vision, and execution. And so first we have to look when we're stuck and when we lack clarity. We have to first look at how do we think, because that's where everything starts. So we'll get into that. Then once we have done that and we sort of opened up the way that we look at our thoughts and imagine what's possible for us, all of a sudden we can expand the horizon of the things we could actually do, because that's the second thing we do. We very often limit ourselves. And as Lauren is saying, it's not only that we will limit ourselves in our mind, but it's also the environment we're in that's going to limit us. It's the people around us and what they tell us that's going to limit us. It's all of the stories from our past. So you see, these things are very much connected. It's very hard to see an horizon of opportunity when you are stuck in your mind with ideas that you can't seem to get out of. So once we've expanded our horizons, we are going to have to start crafting a vision, like really thinking about, okay, so if I am the master of my thoughts, and if I have all of these options in front of me, what am I going to do? And finally, once you have that, we can then start to think about execution, because of course, it's great to have a wonderful mindset. It's great to have all of these options, a plan, but then we still have to do the work. So that is the 4th and final step. Now, these 4 steps are also how I guide people in my one-on-one coaching work. Even though it's kind of fluid, we do get through these 4 stages because they are the stages I believe you need to effect change. Now, if we look at step 1, so mindset, the things that are important here is that everything we think influences how we feel. How we feel is how we eventually act, and how we act eventually creates the life we have, because it's the decisions we make, it's the direction we go in. So if we can understand how we think, which is at the beginning of this entire thing, we can then break free and we can start to create a new reality for ourselves because we're starting to think different thoughts. It seems fairly simple, but it's quite complicated to really have control over our thoughts, because 95% of everything we think is unconscious to begin with. So how do you get to a place of control? How do you get to a place where you can actually start to create your reality when you know it all starts with circumstances becoming experiences, becoming beliefs? What do I mean by that? I mean that a lot of what we believe, well, basically everything we believe comes from somewhere. We don't get born with beliefs, they are given to us, right? And I would really love to know what you think about this. So if anything like pops up while I'm talking, please share in the chat, because I want this to be a conversation rather than anything else. So please share. But so we have circumstances that turn into experiences where we are born, the people around us, what they believe, the beliefs that they give us, then that become our beliefs. Those beliefs become our thoughts. They become our behavior through our emotions and through our feelings, and that then becomes our reality. Once we understand this, we understand that the real way to change is actually to change how we think. And there are 2 ways, like 2 big ways of thinking. There is a mindset of expansion and there is a mindset of limits. And this is what Carol Dweck talks about in her book Mindset, the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. And the difference between those 2 is that If you have a fixed mindset, you will believe that the world is the way it is, but that you are also the way you are, meaning that your capacity for change, your capacity for growth is really limited. While if you have a mindset that is expansive, a growth mindset, like she calls it, you know that whatever you don't know today, you can learn, that whatever you think today can be different tomorrow. So you see that there is growth and flexibility in your thinking, and as a result, in your life. Because if you go towards reality, thinking that everything is the way it is, and there's very little room for change, and there's a lot of fear, and, you know, like, especially if you have very limiting beliefs, it's going to be very hard to change. And that's where I find a lot of clients in the beginning are stuck. And they're really stuck in their heads more than anything else, as opposed to people who come to me with this sort of flexible mind of, well, you know, I'm not really sure, but I know I can learn and I know I can grow. So that's the first really important piece. The second piece, and this is related to the first one, is very often I meet people who have sort of an inflexible mind because they're actually afraid of change. And human beings are all afraid of change. We don't like change. I mean, I don't even like change. I know it's good for me, but every time that I change or every time that I grow, I suffer. There is an element of deconstruction. There is really, the way that I really look at it is like, this is what happens to me, and this is what happens to my personality, and what happens to the human being that I am when I am in change. And so I have to be deconstructed to then be constructed again in a different way. I become somebody new, but it's not an easy process. And so there is a clear connection between being stuck and being afraid of change. I talk about it a little bit more in the book, and I give a number of examples of where this comes from and why this is important. Because, of course, we need to, in a way, embrace change. If you don't embrace change, you're not going to be able to grow. If you're not able to embrace change, you're not going to be able to see new possibilities for yourself. And the other thing about change, and I think this is pivotal, this is a really important piece, is that everyone has a breaking point, but unfortunately, very often it's a very painful one. And so in the book, I talk about the story of the dog and the nail. And maybe you've heard me talk about this before, because this is a story that's really so powerful for me. And when I read it back like 10 years ago, when I was at the beginning of this journey, I remember thinking, oh, wow. So the story of the dog and the nail goes as follows. And this is me just, you know, giving it my own twist. But you can read it in the book. There is a farmer that has a dog, and the farmer is on his porch at night after a day's work, and the dog is inside and the dog is screaming. There is a friend of the farmer who comes by and who hears the dog scream and asks the farmer what is going on with his dog. And the farmer says, well, he's sitting on a nail. To which the friend replies, a little bit, you know, like confused, asking, but why doesn't he get up? And the farmer says, well, because it doesn't hurt hard enough yet. And that is the truth of a lot of us. We're all sitting on nails. We all have things we want to change all the time, but we're waiting almost for it to hurt too much, so we don't have an excuse anymore to stay where we are. And that is because we really don't like change. So the first thing that we really have to understand is that we're afraid of change, so it's never going to feel good, at least not in the beginning, but you can sort of get used to change and see it as a thing that's actually fun, luckily. But the second thing, and I think this is the most important one, is that you can recognize that you have agency here. you can actually get up from the nail whenever you feel like it. You don't have to wait. You don't have to wait until it's super painful, until you are at your breaking point. And I think that is the success of personal leadership, which is to actually say, okay, I am not very satisfied with this thing. It doesn't really hurt yet, but I want something else for myself. So I'm not going to be motivated by the pain, but I'm going to be motivated by myself. And that is really the number one truth about change and about life. That is that everything always changes. It's an illusion, again, to think that everything stays the same. That's a very like moment to moment kind of experience. But, and so it's like counterintuitive, right? At the same time, everything changes. We are always changing, you know, whatever. And at the same time, we want to remain the same, always where we are. So the trick, and this is the trick of mindset and step one, is to embrace change, embrace the messiness of it, embrace it like it's the most amazing thing in the world, because it actually is. It's the thing that's going to get you where you want to go. If you don't want change, you're not going to achieve anything. So that is really the number one thing for mindset. It's you have control, you have agency over your thoughts, over what you think, and especially over how that then can induce change. Now, there is a whole chapter in the book about it. I can't really go into all details today because we only have 90 minutes. I want to hear from you. There's a lot I want to share, but dig into that. It's a really important piece. Embrace change and fall in love with it. Step one. And know that you can change your mind, that all the beliefs you have, all the thoughts you have, they were just put there so you can replace them with other things. It's not easy, I know, but it's absolutely doable. Okay, step two, options. So once we realize that there is this incredible world in front of us, once we realize that all the thoughts we have are just merely that thoughts, so we can change them for other ones, we can start to unlock limitless options for ourselves. We can also start to see where what I call inherited dreams come into play. And what are inherited dreams? Inherited dreams are the dreams we received from our parents, society, about the stuff we should want, about the stuff we should be doing, but that aren't actually our own dreams. And then the third part is, once you start to see that certain dreams are not your own, you can start to shape your own reality. Like if you have control of, thank you, Kristen, that's very true. Don't wait for the breaking point. So if you start to understand, you don't have to wait for the breaking point. If you start to understand that your version of success or whatever it is that you're currently doing actually doesn't belong to you, you can start to imagine a reality that's going to be completely different and that's going to be entirely yours. So how do you do that? Well, first, you have to start looking differently. The world is full of possibilities, but we fail to see them so often, again, because we're all in these little tunnels. We're all sitting on these little nails. And so what you have to start doing is you have to become very curious. You have to become curious about the nails you're sitting on. Maybe you're not even feeling them. So start to inquire, start to think about those things. You have to become really curious about where your ideas come from, where your beliefs come from, who gave them to you. And then you have to understand that leadership is not only a business term. I think there's this, really important piece of leadership, which is leadership is a personal affair. In all things, every day, you can decide. And I know I'm on a soapbox right now, and I can talk about this stuff for hours. I also talk about this in my book. Lucky me to have the chance to question myself about it. Yes, what is a successful life? And that's a really good question. I believe there's a very simple answer to it. A successful life is a happy one. It's just a happy one. And I think you become happy when you understand how you can be in charge of your thoughts instead of your thoughts in charge of you. And that's tough. That's tough to get out of that cycle. But everything we're talking about today is really, really helpful. So just understand that you have leadership over your life, and you have leadership over your life through the leadership you can have over your thoughts and your beliefs. I think it's very important to make that point. Like that quote that we saw earlier, all that you are is the result of what you have thought. It's very true. So change the thoughts. And so that brings me to the third piece here, which is your mindset really shapes your perception of possibilities. If you think, I'm not good at math, you are unconsciously going to filter out any opportunity where there is a math challenge. You're not going to see them because you're just convinced that that's not going to work for you, so you're not going to do it. And we don't get the extent of this. The extent of this is incredible. We do this all the time. We filter out all the time based on all the stuff that we believe. So it's really important to start thinking about what is it that I really believe. And I know you probably heard this before, but doing this work is really important to get to a place where you can actually change your reality. There's a lot of exercises in the book that you can do that are going to be helpful with that. And I just want to, this is also a little piece from the book, and I just want to do it the right way. So I have the page with me from the book. Because this is a really, we don't understand very often, at least I never did until I did, that we are interpretation machines. And we always think we see everything about the world and that we, have a neutral position about things. But the reality is everything we think, how we react to the world, it's all conditioned based on the experiences and the circumstances and all we talked about before. Now, to come back to this specific image and example, I'm just going to read a little bit from the book. So this is page 93, if you have the book. Dr. Michael Gazzaniga, a professor of psychology at the University of California, Santa Barbara, and a leading researcher in cognitive neuroscience, has devoted a significant part of his career to understanding the brain through split tests between left and right brain hemispheres. In particular, Dr. Gazzaniga did extensive research with test subjects who had undergone split brain surgery, where the corpus callosum, so that's their right and left brain hemispheres, had been partially or entirely split to stop epilepsy seizures. The study showed that meaning, aka interpretation, right, what we do all the time with the world, is a right brain activity. When shown images of things, the left hemisphere can draw pictures of them, but cannot give them meaning without the help of the right hemisphere. I know it's complicated. That's why I'm reading it. The right hemisphere is where interpretation happens, even when both hemispheres aren't talking to each other. And so he did a lot of tests. And one of these tests, which is from this picture, is a subject, JW, who was shown two words simultaneously. So one on the right and one on the left, bell plus music, bell and music. Bell was shown to his non-speaking right brain, and music was shown to his speaking left brain. When asked to point to a picture of what he saw with his right brain, he chose a picture of the church bell, so the little church image you see there. Out of the 4 images, of which all 3 others actually depicted music. And the reason he chose that picture, he told the researchers, is because the pictures reminded The picture reminded him of music, and he told a story about a bell he heard right before the experiment. Now, what does that tell us? It tells us that the right hemisphere is excellent at analyzing and perceptual grouping, organizing complex patterns into meaning. The left brain loves to interpret and synthesize information into a common narrative that relates to us, the person as a whole. It has to make sense to us. When the left hemisphere picks up a visual or a language cue, the right side will look for its meaning, even when it doesn't have all of the information available. And so why is this important? It's important because we have to be careful with our interpreter. We don't have all the information. We all only have this little tunnel of information, and we still think we know everything and we're making the best decision in the moment about everything. So one of the things in my own life that I've been able to resolve for a big part, but that still, you know, plays with me sometimes, is when I get triggered. We all get triggered, right? We all have like very emotional responses to things. And we always think, at least I'm not going to generalize, but I always think in the moment that my reaction is correct. And I always fail to realize that I'm actually being triggered. I think I'm right, and not that I'm triggered. I think I'm right, and the person in front of me has done X, Y, Z, and that's the reason why I feel the way I feel. When I take a step back and I look at the situation and I start to really give, you know, a broader meaning to it, 9 times out of 10, I realize that I have been triggered by something that is in me, by a belief, by an experience, by history, by something, but not by the person in front of me. And so that's interesting, because in the moment, I really feel I'm right. And then afterwards, I realize I'm not. And still, we come up with these solutions to stay this complete being that makes sense to us, even though we have all of these weird experiences about the world that don't really make sense very often. And so following that, we have to be careful about what we believe we want, because a lot of what we want is given to us by the people around us, by our caregivers, by the people that, you know, educated us, by our friends, by what everybody else thinks we should want. A lot of our personality is built based on what others tell us about ourselves. And of course, that's the way it works. So without that, without the eye of the other, but that's philosophical, but I talk about it in the book too, because it's kind of important, like we become through the eyes of the other. But we also have to know and realize we have this core that we can play with. It's like clay. We can really shape it the way we want to. We can change it the way we want to. So that's interesting. And so the thing that you have to remember here is that it's really important to not let yourself be influenced too much by what you think you should do, because that really clouds the judgment of what you really want to do. And that's also gonna keep you from imagining new things for yourself. And connected to that, and then I want to go back to what Valerie was saying, we have to realize that very often we have outdated ideas of what success is and what it should look like, and that we can rewrite success to what we want it to mean. And there's really no limit. Like, success doesn't, I mean, of course, we all want to, you know, be safe, and we all want to be happy and healthy, and we all want friends and family. All of those things are part of success. But success is not this crazy, elusive thing where we, you know, work ourselves to death, or where it doesn't need to be that. So we have to figure out for ourselves what it means. And one of the things that's important there is that, again, the environment we're in really is going to shape your reality. I remember a couple of days ago, I woke up and I had like an annoying message through WhatsApp. And I decided that even though I had had that and I was having a reaction to it, I was going to have an awesome day, an awesome day. And every time that my mind went back to that message and that I started to think about what am I going to send back, and it wasn't anything like horrible, but it was just, you know, how sometimes you can just be frustrated or triggered by people and what they say. Anyway, I would go back to, nope, I'm going to have an awesome day today. And I started to look around me for signs of how wonderful the day was. And the more I was looking for that, the more the day became wonderful. And the less I was interested in even responding to that message, which I eventually didn't do. Or I think I just sent something like, it's all okay, whatever. And so the problem went away. But so the environment you're in, and that is your mind as much as everything you see around you, is going to shape your reality. And so it's important to really think about, what are the thoughts that I'm going to allow? What are those thoughts going to be? Because they're going to shape your reality. And then what are the things around me that I can alter? I'm looking around while I say that because, you know, I like things to be clean and neat, that are going to change the way I feel about my life. And one of the ways that you can do that is just the way I did it. Like when I told myself, I'm going to have this amazing day today, that's an experiment. That's me really deciding that I'm going to like give my thoughts a particular direction and see if it works. It's an experiment. The same with your environment. If you're dissatisfied with your environment, start moving things around. And it can be little things. You don't have to change everything all in one go, but change a few things and then see how that changes how you feel and what you think. Do that enough, and you will teach your nervous system and your brain that it's safe and that you can actually, you know, build on that and evolve even more. So that's an important piece of seeing options, right? Even in the moment when you say, I'm going to have an awesome day, that is a different option you're choosing. So please, in the chat, we're halfway now through the methods. Let me know what you think so far. What's coming up for you? I would really love to know. While I'm waiting for that, I am going to continue. And so step 3 is vision. So now that we know, okay, I have a little bit of control here. I have control over my thoughts. I have control over my environment. I have control over how I look at the world. I have control over my dreams. I have control over success. What is it that I want to do with my life? And that is the toughest question of all, of course, because we often give it so much meaning. Maybe what I'm going to say now is going to sound a little controversial, but what I've learned doing this work is that our life is sort of like a knitted together kind of tapestry. And we all always want to have total clarity about what the tapestry is going to look like at the end. But we can't really do that because we have to live it and we have to evolve to be able to define even what we want it to look like. So we often have it backwards. And because we have it backwards, we tend to hold ourselves from doing anything. We procrastinate, we overthink, we don't make decisions because we're so afraid it's going to be the wrong decision, as if decisions are forever. And so one of the ways that we can counter that a little bit is to really get to know ourselves, and to get to know ourselves in the sense of, what are the pieces about me that I really like and that make me happy? And what do I need to do in my daily life to get a little bit of happiness every single day? So those are, that's where we start. And then what we do is we start to alter our life by disruptive strategies. We disrupt it a little bit. And I'm going to talk about that. It sounds really much worse than it is, but it's really about pushing on the system that is us and our life a little bit so that it can change and grow and evolve into something else. And then, of course, we need to be willing to have a vision of what it is that we want. And that vision can be based on an emotion, it can be based on something we really want. And I can share my current vision and what I'm currently doing, because I have these 5-year buckets that I've been working with since 2010 in the meantime. So this is I'm at the end of my 3rd one and starting my 4th one. And I mean, I process a little bit faster now. So I already started the 4th one as I'm finishing the 3rd one. But anyway, that's details. But so we're going to look at that now. So the first thing is that it's really okay to feel the way you feel. It's really okay to not want the same thing as everybody else. It's really okay to want to figure things out on your own. It's really okay to have a lot of interest. It's really okay to not really be sure of what you want to do, because those are qualities I find that can be really positive and that can really help you. And the way you do that is by embracing them. Right? When we're educated and when we go through school systems, especially creative types like we are, what happens is our creativity is educated out of us in many, many cases. The stuff that makes us adventurous and fearless and interested and wanting more out of life, the fun stuff, is educated out of us very often. And for, it's because our parents want the best for us and everybody wants the best for us. But the result of that is that we become these very small versions of who we really are, and we suppress a lot of our dreams and our wishes and our desires. And I've found, at least in my own life, that the first part of my life that was educated out of me, and then the second part of my life, I started to try and to get back to that and to remember who I was and to remember what made me unique, because that is also where my power is, where play is, where creativity is, where I am strong and well, not always, but where I have my moments of fearlessness and courage. I don't find those in the confinement of how I was educated. I find those outside of that. So that's why it's really important to just fall in love with who you are and all aspects of you. And then another part of that is, and I think this is something we all do, unfortunately, especially when it's about our vision. Sometimes we know what we want to do. Sometimes we're very clear. We have put a plan together, but we are simply not doing the stuff we said we were going to do. And that is so bad, because we make promises to ourselves every single day. Like the way that I used to do it was, on a Sunday, I would write down in my little calendar notebook everything that I was going to do during the week. And especially when I was going to do some self-care and go to the gym and do this and do that. And come Monday, all the stuff that I promised myself I was going to do for me was the first stuff to go when I had other things to do. And I did this systematically, so much so that I came to a point where I unconsciously just didn't believe myself anymore. I wrote things down, but when I wrote them down, I already knew that I was probably not going to do them. And that really undermined my capacity to actually do things and see this vision that I had for myself come to life. So it's not only about having the vision, it's also about seeing what you're doing or how you are sabotaging that vision for yourself. And I would love to know in the chat, are you familiar with that? With saying that you're going to do XYZ and then actually not doing it. And then the next day saying it again and then again, or, you know, these to-do lists that just follow you forever and forever and forever, and they get longer and longer and longer, but you actually don't get to the end of that. That's a very dangerous place to be, because that's really going to undermine your capacity to believe that you can actually achieve things. So this brings us to my wife and my mother-in-law. I'm gonna read a little bit. So this is an old drawing, and I would love to know, what do you see first? Do you see a younger woman first, or have you seen a younger woman first, or do you see an older woman? Can you share that in chat so I know which one it is for you? Older one, switch between both. Okay, so I'm going to break it to you. If you see the younger woman first, you're probably more youthful, while if you see an older woman, you're probably older, right? I disagree with it a little bit, because I can also switch between the two. But I think it's interesting because you see how the eye works. We can, depending on our beliefs, on how we stand in the world, how, you know, whatever, everything that makes up who we are will influence how we see things. And that is a very important thing, because when we craft a vision, very often we are going to craft that vision based on assumptions. And a lot of those assumptions, especially about us, about what's possible for us, about what's not possible, about what, you know, all the things we have to consider, about all these things, are going to shape that vision much more than we are going to do it ourselves. If I have a belief, and this is a belief I had for a very long time, that I had to be very careful. This is a belief my father gave me, that, you know, you could lose all of your money in an instant, and then you would be left out in the street with nothing. That's how I was raised. You have to work hard, and you have to work all the time, and you have to be very careful, because everybody's going to steal your money. You are not going to be able to create a grand vision where you invest a lot of money in a business, where you take a lot of risks, because that just doesn't fit these false assumptions you have about the world. So it's really important to know that whatever it is you're looking at, like my wife and my mother-in-law, you're looking at it from a particular perspective. And it's the perspective that's going to color what you're looking at. It's not neutral. It's never neutral. And that's why it's important to disrupt those things, disrupt what you think, because you have to test these assumptions. And that is one of the things that I do with clients all the time. I'm so big of a fan of experiments and trying things out, because when somebody comes to me, like, one of the things that happens a lot in coaching is that people will come to you and they will make like definitive statements about things. They will say, oh, well, I can't do that because, oh, well, you know, I wish I could be a copywriter, but that's not going to work because copywriters make no money. That is a definitive assumption about a subject you know nothing about because you've never tried it. So we all do this, and we have to be very careful with that. And whenever we make these definitive statements or we have these false assumptions, we have to test them out in the real world, because otherwise we're never going to know. That's why we start with creating a really big and compelling vision for our life without censoring ourselves based on all the stuff we believe. It's not easy. It's not easy. You have to like be willing to say, this is what I want for myself. And so I promised I was going to share what is the bucket I'm still working on? So my previous bucket was I wanted to become an author. I wanted to write books. So I've written this one. I've written another book before. I have been accepted into a very nice writing academy. I have taken writing classes for 2 years, and I'm working on a third book. So I pretty much everything that was on the list for that bucket has been done. I'm finishing it. But the next bucket, I already started. And one day I was sitting in my office, and there is this movie that inspired me to become a businesswoman and an entrepreneur. And maybe you know the movie. The movie is called Working Girl. I know it's actually such an interesting title because I've been a working girl for forever. And I remember when I saw that movie when I was like, I don't know, a teen, like 14, 15, 16, maybe. I don't remember that kind of age. I remember watching the movie, and at the end of the movie, I called my mom and I said, Mom, this is what I want to do when I grow up. And that's exactly what I did. And so I have the movie poster of that movie hanging in my office. And one day, a few years ago in 2022, I was looking at it, and it's set in New York. So you see the backdrop of New York, and then you see Harrison Ford and Sigourney Weaver, whatever, in front. And I was looking at it and I was like, I actually always wanted to live in New York. Do you think that could be possible? And so since then, I've been working on making that a reality for myself. And if you had told me 10 years ago that that was the level of dreams that I would have, to write books and to do this and to travel and to relocate to a completely different country and to follow, dreams that I had when I was 15, I would have said that would never happen. But when I look at it now, I understand why it is happening, because I am not stopping myself from creating these compelling visions. In the moment I'm creating it, I'm just focusing on, this is what I want to have. And then afterwards, I will figure out how to get there. What a lot of us do, and what I used to do as well, is that we start with the limiting assumptions. And so, you can have these moments where you're, I don't know, at night, you're sitting in the sofa, Netflix is on, and you start to dream away at all the things you could do. And in an hour or so, you have dreamt your way in and out and in and out and in and out of so many great dreams and ideas, because you have found things for each of them that make them impossible or that eliminate them. Isn't that sad when you think about it? That you have all these dreams and they never go further than your mind. I find that to be, I call that the graveyard of dreams, where they end even before they started. I talk about it in the book. But so once we have that vision, finally, we need to execute. And I think we have 2 things that really keep us stuck. Well, 3 maybe. It's the way we think, it's the way we overthink, and it's the way when we finally actually know what we want to do, fear is still there. And then fear becomes the showstopper. Fear makes us procrastinate. And there is no secret to being in action. You really simply have to do something. And I know that sounds a little harsh, but it's the truth. And so there are a couple of things that I want to give you, and I talk about much more in the book. But one of the things that's really important, and I see a lot of people fail at, is that they want to try everything. They want to do everything. And I know, especially for creatives, it's hard not to do that. But trying to do everything is honestly as bad as trying nothing, because you won't get there. In my coaching business, I always tell people, with me, you don't have to choose. We're going to combine. But in the moment, you do have to choose something. And that's not for forever. And that's not the only thing you'll ever do, but it's for right now. And you don't have to give that too much thought, because it doesn't really matter what it is. And that's another moment where people get sort of caught up and stuck, because that thing you're going to start doing really isn't about what it is you're doing. It's just about getting you into action. We want a little bit of entropy into the system that you are, and we want to get you out of the starting blocks, and we want you doing something, because once you are in motion, you are going to start imagining new things, and you're going to get inspired, and that's going to give more energy to the system, and etc., etc. So there, it's really about, the way that I do it with clients sometimes, and even with myself, I will tell them, okay, take a bucket, a bowl, whatever, a glass, put all of the stuff that you've been thinking about doing in there, and then promise yourself one thing. You're going to take one of the pieces of papers out of there, and whatever is on the piece of paper, you're going to do it. And that's a hard thing for a lot of people to do. I don't know how you feel about it when I'm telling you like that, but for a lot of people, that is a tough one. What often happens, and that's a good thing, is they will take a piece of paper out of there and they will look at it and instantly know this is not what they want. If that happens, we've achieved something amazing. We've eliminated an option, because once you felt it, you have to feel it. You can't think it. You have to feel that you don't want to do something. You will never think about it again. But very often, they just take something and then they have to force themselves. But once they do, they get into motion and they're capable of doing much more. Another thing that's important here, and that I share in the book, is how being clear on your values, and I'm not going to go into too much of this right now. I have a group program coming up where we're going to deeper into these things, but valued living will give you more direction than achievement-based living, because in the end, it's about how you want to feel in your life. And we're back at success, and not all of the things that you want to have in life. Final notes on execution. Fear will show up. An acronym for fear is false evidence appearing real. And I think that's a really important one, because very often we get stuck again once we know what we want, we have our plan, all of that, because then we get really stressed out about the fact that we could actually do and achieve the thing that we said we were going to do and we were going to achieve. So that is a big one. And then the other one that I think we shouldn't underestimate, and I talked a little bit about triggers and responses earlier, is the impact of what we have experienced growing up, or even as adults, that is still lingering and that we haven't addressed. Again, I talk about it a little bit more in the book, and we can't really go into too much detail because I know we're nearing the end of the presentation time. But if you feel like you know what it is you want to do, if you feel like you have a plan and you keep struggling with procrastination and not being able to move forward, look at the fear that's underneath. There always is one. And that is one of the big things that I uncover with my clients in the work we do together. Now, willpower. I want to just talk about willpower for a minute. You know, very often I remember people telling me all the time, it's just about willpower. If you really want to do it, just do it. Science, in the meantime, has proven that that's not really true. There's experiments around that showed that willpower is actually a limited resource. And once we've used a little bit of it or too much of it, there's not much left. And so then we will get back into negative cycles of procrastination and not being able to do what we want to do, etc. A much better way to approach things is actually to be diligent and to create habits for yourself. And the way you do that is by deciding. If you decide, and you have to make a real decision. And when I was researching decisions, I was given like so many different examples, but let's imagine you're at a party and you have decided 98% that you're not going to eat any chocolate. And then the tray comes along and it's like this delicious chocolate cake. Because you've given yourself 2% leeway, chances are in the moment, you are going to have a moment of weakness, quote unquote, and you might eat some chocolate. If you've made a 100% decision that that's not going to happen, you will let the tray pass by and you won't touch it. Why? Because this is about embodying your decisions. Once you have made a decision fully, you are no longer the person that does XYZ. You are this new person that does, all these other things. The person that wants to eat kale instead of chocolate, or that wants to go to the gym in the morning instead of snoozing. But it needs to be an absolute decision that you make consciously. That's very, very important. And one of the things, so if we talk about 3 strategies that are going to help with that, we have, and we're at the end of our presentation already, it goes so fast. So the first thing is you want to create habits that are going to work for you. The second one is, and there's many more in the book, you want to make sure that the chunks of things that you give yourself to do are doable for you. And third, and this is from Seinfeld, it's a Seinfeld strategy, which I think is amazing. You want to, once you start, make sure that you don't break the chain. And what did he mean by that? He meant you have to do the thing every single day, even if it's just a tiny thing, even if it's only 5 minutes a day. You have to do it every single day because that's going to build a habit. That's going to be a 100% decision. And that's actually going to be a replacement for willpower. So that's an important one. Now, that's a little bit what I wanted to say today. Now, I want to welcome every question you might have. Please drop them in the chats. What I want to share is that we are going to dive deeper into all of this stuff with my first ever group coaching program to get unstuck. And we are starting on July the 17th, but the doors to the early bird tickets are open now. You can get in. There's going to be live classes throughout. There's going to be a lot of learning material. You're going to get my book. You're going to get coaching. You will get access to everything for an unlimited amount of time. And if you sign up today, you will also get a printed copy of my Get Unstuck workbook. You're going to get one of my signature necklaces sent to you, which you can see here. You're going to get free access to my most popular course. You're going to get 10 credits towards my Get Unstuck coaching certification, because I'm also going to create, I have a coaching certification program for people who want to be able to teach this method or use this method in their own coaching business, and you will get a course completion certificate. So there's a lot of stuff that you can get, plus the early bird price is like half the price of what the program is going to be, and that's only going to be open for a few days. So if you're interested in that, I would say now is the time to sign up. And I can drop the link in the chat here if that's helpful. I'm going to do that. Yes, I love the necklace as well. And you know what? This is like such a like a conversation starter, like everywhere. So I always have one like packed, like wrapped with me everywhere I go, because whenever anyone sees this, especially women, I would say mostly women, they see this necklace, they always start to talk about it with me. And then depending, but usually I will offer it to the person asking about it. So last I was on a plane and the flight attendant, she came to me and she said, "Oh, I love your necklace." So when I left the plane, because she had been so good to me throughout the flight, I gave her one, and she was really, really excited about that. So we're building a little army of people who take control and leadership of their life and of their goals and of their dreams and of their success. And that's it. So I don't know if you have any other questions. If so, please ask now. If not, then we are at the end of our time together today. Okay, so what is the program about? Thank you. That's a good question. Well, so it's 10 weeks. So basically, the group program really is the same, like you can expect the same results as what you would have if you were in a one-on-one coaching series with me for 3 months. I have created it in such a way that you will have the same benefits, the same transformation, the same access to information. Plus, so there is a bi-weekly session over Zoom, 2 hours, where we dive into the material, where you have homework, where you will be put together with a buddy, but also in breakout rooms, where there is work that you can do. And then we have a 2-week integration period where online on my website, you will have access to a membership area where there is additional information, where you can post homework, where you can ask questions, all of those things. And we do this like in a very organic but structured way, just like a coaching series is when you would work with me one-on-one. And I will be the one guiding the whole process and making sure that you get from this place of lack of clarity, feeling stuck, not really knowing what it is you want to do, to this place of clarity and of plan and of, having these steps that you can take to move forward and get to the next step of your life and start building the next thing that you've been thinking about and that you want to build. So that's really what it's for. It's to help you to go from, I'm not really sure, I have questions, I don't know, I could do all of these things, to really get to a point where you have a plan, a vision, and steps that you can take, and that you're in action again, which is the point when we get unstuck. Thank you for that question. That was a really great question. I don't know if there are any other questions before we end today. If not, I want to thank you all for being here. It was wonderful seeing you. And I hope to welcome you to the program. Also, feel free to send me any messages over email, WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, whatever works best for you. And you are so welcome. It was my pleasure, Valerie, and so good to see you. And thank you all. And I will see you again soon.